Welcome back to Gear of the Week, and today it's going to be mostly about Kizer knives. I got so many in the mail, and we're going to do a brief look at all of them, but we're also going to talk about two flashlights, which in my opinion could be game-changing for a couple of different reasons. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is a flashlight I have already reviewed before, the FC12, but they have made some updates to it that I think are worth noting. Number one, I think they have improved on the coating. It's more of a matte finish versus a nice glossy, which I really like, quite a bit nicer. It still has the Type-C charging port, still has the side switch with the color indicator inside, and the tail switch as well. It's still tail stands, so all of that's great. It's got the reversible clip, also something that I appreciate. But what makes this great and why it's an improvement over the past design is they have added a second mode set. So they had an economy mode or an everyday mode. Now they have added tack mode, which now it's a true tactical flashlight because every time you press the tail switch, you're going to get that 2000 lumen turbo right away, no matter what you had it in before. And for that reason, this is actually a sub $30 truly tactical flashlight. That's not really something I could say before. There really wasn't many good options that had a mechanical tail switch, but also had, the ability to come in on turbo every single time. And the ThruNite TN12 Pro has since kind of gone up in price, and it's a lot easier to hit the side switch. And speaking of side switch, if you have like this being pressed in your pocket, it's never going to turn on. It doesn't have any function when it's in off from the side switch, unless you want moonlight. We'll get to that in a second. So if I click the tail switch, I get the 2000 lumen output, and then I can cycle down to the medium mode right here, and then cycle back and forth between the two whenever I want to. So if I'm holding it like this, I can use my pinky to cycle between the two, or turn off with the tail. If I'm in a dark room and I don't want to blow out my vision with either of those two modes, here's what you can do. You hold press the side switch, press the tail, and you come in on a 1 lumen mode. And then from here, you can cycle up to 300 and then up to the 2000. They have basically perfected it. At sub $30, this is the flashlight I would recommend if you're looking for something that functions like many of the more expensive lights out there. And this actually has an SFT40, which is a very, very good emitter designed to have a lot of candela, which is high beam concentration, and it can throw a beam at a very long distance, over 300 meters. So the combination of everything, and you have the economy mode if you like that instead, makes it probably one of the best sub $30 flashlights currently in existence. I highly recommend it, and I will leave a link down below. Now the next flashlight is the Nextorch TA15. Now this is absolutely not a budget flashlight. It has a rotary switch. There's a lot of upgrades here compared to some of the budget flashlights, but I think it's going to be worth it once you understand what this can do that's different from the past generations like the TA30C. This is a flashlight capable of using multiple different fuels. In fact, it can use a AA, standard AA, a 14500, a CR123, a 16340, and technically you could make it work with a AAA as well, or a 10440. In theory, if you had a collar of some sort to keep it from moving around inside. And because it can do all of this, because it can use so many different fuels, it actually has the highest fuel versatility besides the ProTac 1L1A, another absolutely incredible flashlight. But because it can use the 14500 and the 16340, it actually can reach a higher output, and it won't get burned out if you accidentally put the wrong battery in. If it fits, usually it's going to work with this light. So in the tack mode, which I really like, it's a half press for momentary turbo, full press for strobe. And if you want to get the low mode, you just turn the collar. So low, medium, high, and then strobe. Very simple user interface. In fact, this is about as good as it gets. There's no need for mode memory. You just select the one you want and you're good to go. And I like that when it's in the tack mode, you can't like you're never gonna have a situation where it's gonna stay on in your pocket. So you can kind of leave it intact pretty much all the time, and you have 700 lumens of output with the battery that is included. I'm pretty sure this is, oh yeah, yeah. So this actually has a type micro USB charging port, but you can get 14500s that actually have a bunch of different charging ports, including type C. You can use any 14500, which is really great. And this is a really cool design. So basically this collar in here, and it actually moves depending on the length of the battery. So if it's a long battery like the AA, it'll get pressed in. And if it's a CR123, it'll just sit on top. So the fuel versatility here is crazy good. It also has a ceramic stripe bezel, so kind of an interesting design. I think it's mostly as an emergency light. And yeah, this would have made my top 10 list of AA flashlights that are also 14500, except that it doesn't account for the price. So the price of this I think is between 60 and 80, depending on where you find it. I think I've seen it at Battery Junction around 65. You might be able to find it for cheaper during Black Friday, but keep an eye on this flashlight. The TA15 could be a game changer for a lot of people who want very simple user interface, really good quality, and also incredible fuel versatility. So this will take pretty much any of the disposable batteries, AA, AAA, and CR123. It'll also use the lithium variations, and it'll use the rechargeable lithium ion versions of those batteries. So all of those options in one flashlight. I adore this. I think it's one of the best things out there. And the only thing that I wish they had is this little finger spot. If it had this, then it would be one of my favorite flashlights maybe ever made. Why is this important? It's not just because of the fact that it gives you different options for hold. It's also the fact that because of the space right here, you can rotate it on the outside of your pocket and use it hands-free, even if you don't have a hat. So you don't need a reversible clip if you have this, because you can stick it in your pocket and then rotate it, and then you can actually see ahead of you. So that's the only thing that I want with this light. And unfortunately, they don't make one of these rings yet, and I tried it. It does not go between the two. This is a little bit narrower barrel, but it's basically the same design. So hopefully they will introduce one of these plastic rings to go with this flashlight, because it is absolutely fantastic. This time around with Kizer, we have a couple fixed blades to talk about. Now, I'm having a little bit of a trouble reading the name for it, and I will be looking it up and listing it. But this is made by Dirk Pinkerton, or should say designed by Dirk Pinkerton, and it is basically a neck knife, right? It has a Wurkkos blade shape. It is made in 154 cm, and you know what? I like it better than I thought I would. It's got an interesting setup. I don't know how exactly you would use this thing, but small and compact and very, very light. It's designed with a really cool sheath that actually does allow you to get access to the ring right off the bat. So that's interesting. I feel like, though, there's a lot of wasted space on this Kydex. Like, why didn't they shrink it down so that it was nice and elegant instead of this big flat piece? It seems like there was a lot of extra plastic that doesn't have to be here. Other than that, it's a really, really cool little fixed blade knife. Not exactly my style. You might end up seeing this in a future giveaway for sure, but overall, very, very neat. The last knife was small. This is anything but. Now, before we pull out the knife, let me first talk about this sheath. Standard Kydex for the most part, except that they have this plate that allows it to work both in horizontal carry as well as vertical carry. So right now it's set up vertically, and then you just unscrew this, rotate it around, and you actually can carry it horizontally. Now, this is a big knife at 9.83 inches overall. So I don't know if I would necessarily want to carry this Scout, because it's likely to kind of poke out beyond the curve, as it were, but very, very cool in general. Now, the retention on this sheath is very, very good. You have to give it a good pull to get it out, which honestly I prefer. I would rather have a really secure sheath. You can press against this ramp if you want to pop the sheath off. Overall, though, very, very nice design on that. Now, the blade itself is made in D2. It's called the Magara, and a full flat grind on this. So pretty cool. Not going to be the most expensive knife, which is great. I do appreciate that, having a couple different budget options. I'm curious to see what the purposes of this knife actually are. I mean, it is very cool in design, but it reminds me quite a bit of a combat-oriented knife. And the handle kind of emulates that in that it makes it incredibly nimble and it locks me in at both the top and the bottom. The one thing I will say though is my hands barely fit in that space. So I use usually a large sized glove, so if that gives you any reference, and I'm just about handling this knife without slipping onto this curved area right here. And I think if you have bigger hands, I think you might have a little bit of a problem. So just keep that in mind. The choke up positions are very, very comfortable. I'm actually kind of surprised that this narrow handle is as nice as it is, especially because a lot of times when you cut out stuff like this, you have an issue. But if it's more combat centric, it's designed to be more nimble, it makes more sense. And the balance is just about right where you think it should be. Well, probably about right there, give or take. Right at the line where your index finger is. So very nimble knife at around a 4-inch blade. Something to consider if you like that kind of, well, more aggressive architecture. Let me know what you guys think about this down below. We're going to move from fixed blades to premium designs also by Kizer. So this is called the Mercury and it is designed by Alex Wurkkos. Now I got the chance to meet the designer, I believe, at Blade Show this year. Really cool guy. And this is a really nice little knife. Very slim and elegant on this. And the nice thing is that it also has real homage to the knife design that it's actually emulating, which is a classic razor. And so it has a nice hollow grind, which I really do like. S35 VN on this, like I said. And yeah, just really good action as well. I like the milled pocket clip. It stands nice and tall, so plenty of space to get it in your pocket, but still very, very firm. Overall, just a really, really slick design. And I love that it's milled on both sides. As much as it might be tempting to do like a frame lock, the problem with frame locks is that you don't get to use both sides as a show side. And now you kind of have that. I also tend to like liner locks a little bit better in the sense that they don't interact with your fingers at all. So you don't accidentally apply more pressure to the lock when you're trying to deploy it. Overall, I gotta say, this is one of my favorite ones from Kizer so far. Alex did a great job and yeah, just really beautiful design. What do you guys think? Next knife we're going to talk about is called the Pheonix, and I think that's really appropriately named in the way they have designed it. It kind of reminds me of charcoal and fire, and guess what? They kind of have all of that tied in, and it even matches my background. We have a milled titanium pocket clip, titanium backspacer, titanium bolsters, and it is a liner lock in design. So you have a flipper tab or thumb stud deployment, and it is a clip point or trailing point design, and it's not a functional fuller, just keeping in mind that this little cutout does not quite have enough space for me to get in there and properly flick it out. So it is mostly for design aesthetics, not really for function. Really interesting design, very, very large amount of belly on this. So it's going to be, well, I guess technically it's kind of one of those skinning hunting knives, theoretically. Although I don't know why you would want to buy something so premium to do that kind of work. If you like the design though, well, this is a good version of it. Really, really excellent action. You can reverse flick it from the thumb stud like I just done. Thumb studs, no problem whatsoever. Excellent detent on this knife. Just a really good overall design. And it is a 3.57-inch blade if you wanted to know. So let me know if this is your jam down in the comments. I'm curious to see which ones like this one or prefer something a little bit more compact. This is more like it. At least it's more of my style. And you have Ultim handles on a Towser K. So this knife, between the handle, which is incredibly comfortable, the sheep's foot blade shape, the fact that my fingers get out of the way when I'm doing press cuts, I prefer a thumb stud deployment, and the action is very good. In fact, so far the best one on the table by a pretty strong margin. Absolutely excellent knife and shape, 154 cm blade on this. And the polished Ultim just is a nice touch because it shows you the internals of the whole thing. And I did wet it just to see what would happen. And it's not as slippery as I would expect, even though they've kind of polished it with a contoured handle. It is quite interesting to play around with. And if you like this design already, well, yeah, the Ultim might be one to pick up because I don't know how many of these are actually going to get made. Ultim is one of those materials where it's not that it's difficult to mill. In fact, the cleanup for it is probably easier than something like G10, but its base raw material cost is much higher. It has the tensile strength of aluminum, and it has a very, very high heat resistance. And that was what it was originally designed to do and work on places where you would fill in parts on spaceships. So very, very cool material. And it's nice to see Kizer getting in on the act. I'm a big fan of Ultim. Let me know down in the comments if you are also a fan. I believe I've never held or used a Sheapdog until, well, just recently. This knife is much better than I gave it credit for when I was looking at the pictures and considering buying knives, you know, myself. And what they don't properly illustrate is just how nice this blade tapers down into a very thin and very, very slicey edge. Like, this is a very thin and slicey blade, which you don't expect from something like it. It just looks like a beefy knife. It looks like they would make a big thick stock, but thankfully they have not done that. Now, this version is the micarta with the button lock. You have the cutout versus thumb studs, and just, yeah, it's excellent. Lots of jimping going all the way up, so you can use it in a choke-up position. Very comfortable with the pocket clip. I don't really even notice it at all. Or you can come back here and use the knife as is. And because, once again, it does not have a flipper, you can get your hands out of the way and use press cuts and or rolling cuts, and it will work great. I don't know what else to say. There are different versions of this knife. So there's small ones, there's large ones. Depends on which one you like. But I gotta say, definitely get the button lock, because the button lock is, well, very fun to play with. Just as long as you have the proper muscle memory, because the action is truly insane. Keep your fingers out of the path, and you should be good to go. That's going to be it for Gear of the Week. Now, I think my favorite of the bunch has to be the Nextorch TA15. I just haven't seen any other flashlight that's capable of using so many different fuel sources with a user interface that, well, frankly, I can find no fault with. So overall, this is probably my pick. I think the second one would have to go to probably this. I just think that this Mercury is much better than I thought it would. Just the design and the milling all the way across. Let me know, though, what is your favorite of the ones shown today? As always, guys, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.